All right, I think we're ready to get started. Can everybody hear me okay in the back? All right. So first, I want to thank you all for being here. There's so many faces in this room that are so important to me. I just really appreciate the support of the community. I want to talk about first the safety considerations, which are where are the exits? And there is an exit at the back of this room to the right. Obviously, the way you came in, you can also go downstairs and there'll be an exit that way. And in a worst case scenario, you trip all over those cords and you could go out this way. So that should be your last choice. And we appreciate the city of Oak Ridge for providing security for this program, which we've done for years. But this year, I just felt it was even particularly important because we're here for an important reason and we don't want it to be anything but observing the remembrance for people. You'll notice that Rabbi Ahuva is not here. She is actually in Israel on a rabbi mission trip. And she let me see today that she had just attended a Yom HaShoah service at the place where the terrible murders took place for the concert. That's where they had their one big Yom HaShoah place. But on the Vima with me is a friend and a minister from the United Church Chapel on the Hill. I get a little bit emotional. Suzanne Blockland has been one of my incredible supporters this last year who constantly reaches out and checks on me. And the church itself has sent supportive information, and so many other people in the interfaith community have been there for me and for the entire Jewish community, and I really appreciate that. So every year we have this program, our Holocaust Remembrance program, and I sort of pick a theme. And the theme this year is the power of hateful words. So in my years of growing up and living a Jewish life in this country, I have never witnessed anything like what I've been seeing and hearing in this country since October 7th. The anti-Semitism that was below the surface is now very much above ground. There are disturbing verbal threats towards Jews that have become normalized, and that's alarming. Words like go back to Poland, really, or all Zionists shall die, or long live Hamas, or October 7th will happen 10,000 more times. It's been found not just in the depths of social media, but it's being heard across the country on college campuses. We see it on television. And many of us, including myself, feel that the safety that we used to have in this country has been threatened, and especially Jewish students who have been harassed and threatened or verbally attacked. So what can the Holocaust teach us about living during this time of hate? For one thing, it teaches us to abandon the faulty optimism of it can't get worse than this, because we know it can. Words matter, and today I want you to hear this message from our teens. We need our youth to be armed with knowledge and to be courageous in the face of intimidation. These are the leaders of the future, and this is a world that they will have to navigate. We learned from the Holocaust that it's not just Jews that need to speak up. And today we included youth from Oak Ridge High School who are taking a new elective course about the Holocaust. We have the honor of hearing from their teacher as our featured speaker. Today, we want to leave our youth knowing that we are there for them and to give each other hope for a better future. So hopefully all of you picked up a program as you came in, and we're going to start with a candle lighting ceremony. That's Steve Reddick, if you'll come forward. I'll call out the names. Are you looking for a place to sit, Natalie? You can come right up and we'll fit you guys in. Just make a little bit of room for them in the first couple of rows. You can come over here. Nope, no problem. This is This is all about the kids today. Okay. Hit mine. And don't worry, you guys won't be sitting down for very long. So our candle lighting ceremony, this is something that Mary Kimmelman, this whole program was started by her in the late 1970s, and the candle lighting part has always been a very meaningful part of the program. So we have 6 memorial candles plus 1 special mirror candle, and I'll be calling people up and they will light candles and say a few words. So the very first candle is for us to remember all the children that were murdered in the Holocaust. And Chloe and Nora Streeter are coming up with their mother, Natalie. He's got them for you.
Oh, thank goodness. Oh. Martin, you wanna light it? You wanna light it? Go ahead. It doesn't matter. Okay. Nope. Okay, the candle we are lighting today is to remember over 1.5 million children under the age of 16 who died in the Holocaust, stripped of their childhoods, their potential forever left unfulfilled. Children had the lowest survival rate in the concentration camps. Shall we never forget?
We shall remember them. The second candle is for mothers and fathers that died in the Holocaust. Coming up to light the candles are Mark Kay and Serene White.
Remembering all the parents who perished, who tried to protect their children.
So many mothers who went with their children into the gas chambers rather than be separated.
We shall not forget.
Thank you. The next candle is for all the relatives that were lost in the Holocaust. And this will be with Rebecca Batterina and Katie Nyad. What did I say? Rebecca, okay, sorry. Eileen, and Rebecca's her daughter, but she's sick today, so.
I'm substitute.
Yes, she's just like a daughter.
Yeah.
Remembering all the sons and daughters who perished. So many never had a chance to say goodbye to their parents. Some spent years after the war searching for lost siblings or a lifetime grieving for them.
Remember all those extended family relatives who died in the Holocaust, leaving some families without any grandparents, aunts, uncles, or cousins.
We shall not forget.
Thank you. The next candle is for the teachers. This will be from lit by Dale Rosenberg and Sheila Morton, dang it, Sheila Morton, who are both very well-known teachers.
Remembering the teachers in the community who, along with other leaders, were often the first to be murdered. Remembering all the teachers who continued to teach, even when it was forbidden and punishment meant death. We shall not forget.
The next candle is Resistance Fighters, and this will be lit by Shuli and Gabrielle Mesa.
Remembering the Jews who fought bravely as partisans in resistance groups that operated under cover of the dense forest of Eastern Europe, the armed and unarmed resistors in the ghettos and camps, and individual acts of defiance that so frequently led to immediate death.
We shall not forget.
Thank you. The sixth candle represents the righteous Gentiles who saved lives. This candle will be lit by Suzanne Blockland.
Honoring the righteous among the nations, an honor bestowed by the state of Israel to non-Jews who risked their lives to save Jews from the Nazis. They were ordinary human beings, and it is precisely their humanity that touches us and should serve as a model. We also honor all of those who stand together against all kinds of hatred. We shall not forget.
And the last candle is the mirror candle. I feel that her spirit is in this room, and she taught us to never forget. Two people who will come up and light her candle, Dorothy DeVan and Julie Kinder McMillan.
Honoring and remembering Mira for all that she did to share her personal experiences so that others would learn from the Holocaust. She impacted so many, including teachers and students of the Holocaust.
As classroom teachers, we were impacted by her, and we continue to carry forward her legacy. May her memory be a blessing.
We shall not forget.
Thank you all so much. We're going to move to the proclamation. We have a representative of City Council here. Councilperson Ellen Smith will read the proclamation that was approved.
It's my honor to present the proclamation that was enacted by City Council last month on April the 8th. Whereas the United States Congress established the Days of Remembrance as the nation's annual commemoration of the Holocaust, which this year is observed from Sunday, May the 5th to Sunday, May the 12th, 2024. And whereas 6 million Jews, including 1.5 million children, were murdered by the Nazis during the Holocaust. Whereas the history of the Holocaust offers an opportunity to reflect on the moral responsibilities of individuals, societies, and governments to ensure that lessons of tolerance, acceptance, and respect for all people are taught into perpetuity. And whereas we, the people of the city of Oak Ridge, should always remember the terrible events of the Holocaust and remain vigilant against hatred, persecution, injustice, and tyranny. And whereas it is our collective responsibility to counter hatred with education so that we can illuminate the factors that lead so quickly from words to acts of violence and terror. And whereas a Holocaust study is available to the community through the Oak Ridge Institute of Continued Learning, Oracle, as the Mira Kimmelman Holocaust Education Study Group, led by teachers Dorothy DeVan and Stephen Reddick, using the memoir by Mira Kimmelman entitled Echoes of the Holocaust. And whereas the Oak Ridge schools have implemented an elective course on the Holocaust for Oak Ridge High School based on the Holocaust and Human Behavior curriculum of Facing History and Ourselves, taught by Dr. Sheila Morton. And whereas we therefore declare the observance of the Days of Remembrance with the Holocaust Remembrance Program to be held Sunday, May the 5th at the Jewish Congregation of Oak Ridge in honor of those who died and those who survived, and in appreciation to those who teach the lessons of the Holocaust. Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the City of Oak Ridge, Tennessee, that May 5, 2024 be proclaimed Holocaust Remembrance Day in the city of Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and that all citizens be encouraged to participate in this event in remembrance of those whose lives were lost or forever affected during this time in our world's history. In witness thereof, I've set Pierre 4, set my hand and caused the great seal of the city of Oak Ridge to be affixed this the 8th day of April in the year 2024. There it is. So I appreciate the chance to have presented that. Thank you.
Thank you. And now the chorus from Oak Ridge Unitarian Church, along with a few other choral people. Come on up.
The same come to the end of the way. The leaden skies blot out the light of the day. The hour we alone will surely appear. Our steps will thunder with the words we are here. The hour we alone will surely appear. Our steps will thunder with the words we are here. Of lands of palm trees to far off lands of snow. We come with anguish, we come with grief, with pain and woe. And where the blood flowed right before our eyes, then our power will bloom, our courage will arise. And where the blood flowed right before our eyes, then our power will bloom, our courage will arise. A glow of morning sun will gild the bright today. Night's darkness vanished like the enemy cast away. But if we perish before this art beyond, this song's a message passed to daughter and to son. But if we perish before this art beyond, this song's a message passed to daughter and to son. Out of its tongue was written, and not with pen or quill, not from a song with flying freely as he will. Sung by a people crushed by falling walls, sung with guns in hand by those who freedom calls. Sung by a people crushed by falling walls, sung with guns in hand by those who freedom calls. I saw stars I cannot see. I sit and wait and brood. I cry bitterly. From streams of pain, Irish melody, strong with the world of peace and the forest light of dark and deep. My weary eyes close, but I cannot see. I sit and wait and brood. I cry bitterly. Bring the end and say, I can be free. On streets of rain, Irish melody, strong on streets of rain, with one of peace
Can you turn off that mic? Thank you so much. Those were songs that Mira picked out herself as songs of resistance that always meant so much to her. So we've kept them in the program. So I appreciate that. We're going to move to the readings by our youth, our teenagers. So Lewis and Lila, if you guys will go ahead and come on up.
Abe Foxman. Abe Foxman's parents made the heart-wrenching choice of giving him up to his Polish Catholic nanny who baptized and raised him as a Catholic during the war years. Thankfully, he and his parents survived the war, and he was reunited with them 4 years later after the fall of the Nazi regime. Foxman is a former national director of the Anti-Defamation League. He shares his thoughts on the origins of the Holocaust, saying, "The crematoria, gas chambers in Auschwitz and elsewhere did not begin with bricks. It began with words, evil words, hateful words, anti-Semitic words, words of prejudice. And they were permitted to proceed to violence because of the absence of words." Because of the silence, because very few people stood up to say, "No, don't say it. It is unacceptable." The hateful words led to the crematoria. When I grew up in Nazi-occupied Poland, I was hidden as a Catholic. I was told as a child of 3 to spit on Jews because they are evil. But after liberation at the age of 5, I came running into the house and I was called a Yid, a Jew, and that was evil. Even after the Holocaust, words of hate still persisted.
Charlotte Knobloch. Born in Munich in 1932, Charlotte Knobloch, daughter of lawyer and Senator Fritz Newland, witnessed the horrors of the Holocaust unfold right in front of her eyes. Having experienced the November pogroms of 1938 and her father's arrest by the Nazis, she escaped the fate of deportation only by hiding under a false name with Catholic farmers who pretended she was their illegitimate daughter. Miss Knobloch was the first woman to head the Central Council of Jews in Germany and has served as head of the Jewish community in Munich since the 1980s. What was it like growing up Jewish in Germany in the 1930s? These are her words. She shares her first memory of being treated differently because she was a Jew. It began with words. We cannot repeat that often enough. It was insults and hatred. They came before the horrific acts, the murders, the crimes, she says. I was 4 years old when I was in the courtyard of the house across the street. I wanted to play with the neighbors' children. I did that almost every day. But now the gate was suddenly locked. My friends looked at me silently. Before I could understand what was going on, the concierge's wife came in and started yelling at me. Jewish children are not allowed to play with our children. I was 4 years old. I didn't even know what Jews were. But I knew now I was a Jewish child. My tears that day, my grandmother dried later, but the pain of that day stayed with me to this day. The injustice, the blind hatred, the contempt, that is how it started.
In Germany in the 1930s, an army of some 8 million children pledged their lives personally to Adolf Hitler in the Third Reich. They were called the Hitler Youth. Oh. Okay. In Germany in the 1930s, an army of some 8 million children pledged their lives personally to Adolf Hitler in the Third Reich. They were called the Hitler Youth. This is the story of these children. He would rise to high command, receive the Iron Cross from Hitler's own hands, and live to tell the cautionary tale. Here's his excerpts from his experience. Hitler said, "We will be one people, one nation, and you, my youths, are going to be that people and that nation." After he uttered this sentence, I belong to Hitler, body and soul. It was memorizing to hear the Fuhrer speak. Suddenly you have become invincible. But all of a sudden, on November the 9th, 1938, excitement broke loose, and it was the Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. It seemed like a frenzy of hatred all of a sudden. As we were crossing the marketplace, a van stopped, and there were perhaps 18, at the most 20 people on it. One of them was shouting, "Let's go to the synagogue and take it apart." Literally seconds later, a stained glass window came crashing onto the road. A few minutes later, one of the stormtroopers was on the roof, and he released the roll of Torah, and he was shouting, "Wipe your blank with it." Even to me as a 10-year-old, the events of Kristallnacht was witnessing the brutality committed on townspeople that I have known all my life signified the end of German innocence. From now on, not one of us could ever maintain that we did not know what was in store for the Jews. By the fall of 1940, the first deportations of Jews of Germany began. One of the first ones occurred in my hometown. I recognize all of them naturally, but there were some I had known intimately as a boy. I had no personal animosity towards them, but I felt what a misfortune that they are Jewish. And I thought it was completely justified that for the survival of Germany, they needed to be deported.
This is part 2 of the same reading. I fully believed that we, as the master race, were entitled to eventually rule the world. All Nazi functions worked on the principle of music and song. You always had the music in your ears. The Nazis really, in that sense, were unsurpassed masters. In our Hitler Youth anthem, the flag version, these weren't merely words. All of a sudden, they became a conviction. I think you can compare it to a religious revival meeting. It was soul-stirring. The death-defying attitude of the Hitler Youth was such that even boys of 11, 12, 13 had no greater wish than to earn a medal, the Iron Cross, for the survival of the fatherland. The idea of facing death at no time was that terrifying, because our fanaticism has prepared us for that possibility for years. The thing that you could do for Germany most was either to win or to die. It was better to die than to live in slavery. I was captured on March the 7th, 1945, in my own hometown. During my captivity, I was forced to look at documentary footage of concentration camps and death camps. It was almost a year later before I was able to accept the veracity of the films that I had seen. And it occurred at the war crime trials in Nuremberg in 1946. I heard the full evidence of accusation directed at the 22 top Nazis who were on trial. One of them was my leader, the former leader of the Hitler Youth, Baldur von Schirach. It is my guilt that I have trained youth for a man who became a murderer 1,000,000 times over. Baldur von Schirach received 20 years for crimes against humanity, and that, in turn, implicated me too, in the count of mass murder, because I had served Hitler just as fanatically as von Schirach. Out of millions of basically innocent children, Hitler and his regime succeeded in creating potential monsters. Could it happen again today? Of course it can. Children are like empty vessels. You can fill them with good, you can fill them with evil, you can fill them with hate, and you can fill them with compassion. So the story of the Hitler Youth can be repeated because, despite Auschwitz, this world has not changed for the better all that much.
Hello, my name is Eleanor Valentino. Learning about the Holocaust left a lasting impression on me because when I was 9 years old, my family and I moved next door to Mira Kimmelman, a Holocaust survivor. When I was given the opportunity to work with a group of peers on a project about the Holocaust, I was immediately intrigued. When my group and I made a picture that transitioned from her life during that time to her life when she moved to the US, we used symbols to represent different things from the Holocaust and from her later life. The Holocaust was a tragic event in history that impacted millions of lives. Learning about this event made me realize the tragedy that Mira had to go through during that awful time. I feel that it is important to teach future generations about the Holocaust so history does not repeat itself. I will always remember all the people who were treated unfairly and feel compelled to further educate myself on tragedies such as this one. I cannot even begin to imagine what Mira went through. She had the sweetest soul and never let my family leave her house empty-handed. Sometimes she would ask my family for small favors, such as changing a light bulb, and would insist we take something in return. She was always kind to me and my family. The Holocaust compels us to remember the lives lost, to recognize the survivors' struggles, and to ensure that a tragedy like this never happens again. By learning from the past, we can build the future based on understanding, respect, and compassion. Thank you.
Anti-Semitism is on the rise. Can teaching about the Holocaust help? Excerpt from Lindsay J. Friedman. Lindsay J. Friedman is a managing director of Echoes and Reflections, representing the Shoah Foundation. Today on Holocaust Remembrance Day, or Yom HaShoah, we remember the millions of Jewish and other victims killed during the murderous Nazi reign in Germany. The Holocaust is practically ancient history for many young people, and for the majority of people in the United States, it is not their history. It's remote. It happened somewhere else, and it's over. But then, why is anti-Semitism on the rise today? I've always framed my work, as many educators do, in 3 phases of impact. What do we need to know about an issue or topic? Why should we care? And how can we act to make a positive difference? Or in more poetic words, how do we inform the head, move the heart, and motivate the hands?
For those teaching the Holocaust, these 3 concepts could not be more vital and interdependent. What do we want students to know about this history? If you want to understand the why and how this genocide could have happened, you need a foundation of the what. But knowing isn't enough. Students have to care. This is where we must teach about the Holocaust as a human story. We should bring this knowledge to life through the integration of visual history testimonies and primary sources. We want young people to see, listen, and come to know that these were real people who had desires, dreams, hopes, and lives that were just waiting to be lived. Which brings us to action. How do we create and inspire a sense of personal agency so that in the face of hatred or anti-Semitism, or when anyone is excluded or othered, we don't just walk away or swipe the screen. At a time when it feels so hard to have these tough conversations, isn't it that much more important that we try? If we want our children to care, we must first care enough to listen to them. Steven Spielberg is the founder of the Shoah Foundation and was director of the movie Schindler's List. This is an excerpt from the speech he delivered to the Shoah Foundation in honor of its 30th anniversary. On December 1st last year, the Shoah Foundation announced an initiative to document the survivors and witnesses of the October 7th terrorist attack on Israel. Both initiatives, recording interviews with survivors of the October 7th attack, and the ongoing collection of Holocaust testimony, seek to fulfill our promise to survivors that their stories would be recorded and shared in the efforts to preserve history and to work towards a world without anti-Semitism or hate of any kind. The rise of extremist views has created a dangerous environment, and radical intolerance leads to a society to no longer celebrate differences, but instead conspire to demonize those who are different to the point of creating the other. The idea of the other is an idea that poisons discourse and creates a dangerous wedge throughout our communities. It rationalizes prejudice and encourages the willful denial and distortion of reality to enforce preconceptions. Othering is the kindling that fuels extremism. We see every day how the machinery of extremism is being used on college campuses, where now fully 50% of students so they have experienced some discrimination because they are Jewish. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. I am increasingly alarmed that we may be condemned to repeat history, to once again have to fight for the very right to be Jewish. I want the young generations to know that we have fought against history repeating itself by celebrating Jewish survival and vitality. I want them to know that we believe in a just world for everyone and will always embrace peace, understanding, and human dignity.
From Sarah Bloomfield, who has led the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum for 25 years. These are excerpts from her remarks at an earlier United Nations Holocaust Memorial Museum ceremony. What makes people susceptible to anti-Semitism, hate, or indifference? How can I avoid simple answers to complex problems? How can I not only listen, but hear, and hear with empathy and humility, those who look, pray, and think differently? How can I actively promote social cohesion by advancing the common good and searching for shared values that transcend differences? The ultimate question, what is my responsibility for the future? The study of Holocaust history helps us look back and see where warning signs were missed, where unintended consequences were ignored, where wishful thinking prevailed. And this looking back is what we owe the victims, to remember their lives, to remember the horror of their deaths, and to remember most of all that we failed them. We cannot fail them again by forgetting. We cannot fail them again by ignoring rising anti-Semitism and distortion and politicization of the Holocaust. We cannot fail them again by not learning from our failures. When we look back in history, it must be to see who was lost. It must be to see what happened and what failed to happen. And it must be to see ourselves.
Thank you guys so much for participating in those readings. It's really meaningful. And now the chorus is going to come back up because we are going to move to a feeling of hope, which you will get from this piece. Thank you so much. Julie, can you turn off that? Yeah. Now we'll have our closing speaker, Sheila Morton, not Thornton, who has taken on the responsibility for teaching this first Holocaust elective at Oak Ridge High School.
Good afternoon. My name is Sheila Morton, and I have to say that I didn't realize that I was sort of standing in the place that Mira had occupied for many years as the speaker, and I'm very humbled by that. I moved to Oak Ridge too late to get to know her, and that is one of the tragedies of my life. So I'm very humbled at this opportunity to speak to you. Many years ago, when I was a young college student, I received an opportunity to go abroad to the Philippines and teach. And I was tremendously excited about this opportunity But I was also really nervous, right? I felt completely inadequate and unknowledgeable. I talked to my mom about this feeling. Many years later, I would have a name for it, right? It's called imposter syndrome, but I didn't know that then. But my mom gave me some really profound advice. She said, Sheila, great work in the world is not always done by the smartest or the most knowledgeable people. At least in my experience, it's more often just done by the people who show up, by the people who say yes and then get to work. God doesn't need you to be the most qualified. He just needs you to go and work hard and change the world. To change the world, we need boots on the ground. Now, we're a military family, so of course this was a military metaphor, but I think it works for us. And I will say that in my life, I have not often been the visionary. But every time an opportunity comes into my life to do or say something that is really meaningful, I try to conquer my inevitable feelings of self-doubt by reminding myself that God mostly just needs people willing to say yes, to put their boots on the ground and get to work. So when Steve Reddick and Jinx Watson approached me a couple of years ago to ask me to teach a Holocaust class at Oak Ridge High School, I reminded myself of this mantra. They and the local Holocaust Remembrance group, and I think the Allison will have to correct me, but I think possibly the state of Tennessee Holocaust Commission might have been involved. They had been wanting to get a Holocaust class into Oak Ridge High School for some time. They had approached several teachers, primarily in the history department. I believe possibly even some administrators, but each time they had been rebuffed, citing lack of resources, lack of interest in teaching, as well as a belief that students wouldn't be willing to sign up for the class. Now, I had gotten to know Steve through a seminar that we had taken from Facing History about the importance of teaching history in its unvarnished, truthful way, and then directing that lens toward our own lives and our own times. It was a great seminar. And by the end, I had really grown very fond of Steve and developed a deep respect for him and his knowledge. And I knew Jinx from my own church, the UU church up the road, who have just provided that really beautiful music for you guys. So I didn't want to disappoint these wonderful and passionate people yet again by saying no, but I will confess that I was very intimidated at the prospect of teaching about the Holocaust. First of all, I am not a historian. I am an English teacher. In fact, for many years, I was an English professor of British literature. I have a master's in medieval and early modern British literature, and I have a PhD in 18th century British drama. So it's about as far from 20th century Jewish and German and European history as you can get. And I will confess that my knowledge of the Holocaust was fairly shameful. I expressed this to Steve and Jinx, but they did not seem particularly concerned. They felt confident that I would acquire the knowledge that I needed. And so with great trepidation, I said yes. Not because I was in any way qualified to do this great work, but because I did know that it was great work that needed doing. And the great works of the world are often done by small people who are just willing to say yes and show up, boots on the ground. And so I waded into the fray. And in many ways, this battle metaphor is apt. First, I had to conquer my own inadequacies. I spent the next several months reading. I attended several seminars put on both by Facing History and the wonderful organization whose curriculum and lesson plans I am endlessly grateful for, and by the Tennessee Holocaust Commission. who have invited scholars from around the world, and from whom it has been my tremendous privilege to learn. I still feel very inadequate, but maybe not wholly so anymore. I know the value of getting to work, so I worked. And then there was the battle of scheduling and curricula. We had to do some careful maneuvering to get the class passed through the system. And in my ignorance, I made a number of missteps with timing and chain of command. It's a long story, but there was some opposition, not a lot, but some in quarters, not because our school, not because any person did not acknowledge the importance of teaching the Holocaust, but mostly because resources at a public high school are always tight. And as an English teacher, I teach the single most tested subject, the one that our state is the most demanding of and calls us to most account for. So freeing up one of my semesters to teach an elective course meant that other people had to do more work. And I am both sympathetic to and very grateful to those people. But we persisted because we believed that this course was more important at this time and in this moment than the state's multiple choice reading test. There was also the fear that students wouldn't want to take a class about the Holocaust. But in this, I can happily report we had worried for nothing. In the first year, I had 60 students enrolled and a substantial wait list. The numbers for next year are not quite as robust yet, but we do have enough to continue teaching and offering the class. So if you know young people, let them know. But those promising numbers bring me to the final battle, that against student apathy. Because while I had 60 students enrolled, some of them, not the majority, but a number of them, had joined the class because it was the only one that would fit in their schedules. And either their counselor or their parent had made them sign up. Looking down at my students, they know who these students are, right? Some of these students were not afraid to let me know that they were not happy to be there. One young man wrote in his journal, when I asked them to reflect about the importance of democracy, I don't know and I don't care. And another, when I asked them to reflect on the importance of being an upstander, wrote, I don't stand up for anyone but myself. The world is tough, get used to it. And then he put his head down and went to sleep. So at times like this, when I'm confronted with this kind of apathy, this lack of caring and compassion and empathy, my heart threatens to despair. I will be honest. But on the other hand, I have students like those who read for you today. And like the young man who really, really did not want to take my class, who fought me for the first 2 weeks, but was informed by his dad that he would finish the course, who recently wrote that, okay, this class is actually kind of interesting and I'm starting to feel bad that I didn't care more. So I remind myself daily that these kids, the reluctant, the truculent, the apathetic, these are the ones I most need to reach, because they are the ones most susceptible to the brand of enticement practiced by groups like the Nazis, which, as we all know, is a growing plague even here in America today. And so we persist. But of course, most of my students are wonderful. They've been willing to engage difficult ideas and ponder both historical and contemporary examples of injustice and cruelty. The curriculum, which was designed by the organization Facing History and ourselves, is really beautiful. Each lesson starts with an overview of history, a big picture of one of the concepts leading up to the Holocaust and then including and even beyond. But then, after we give this larger overview of each of these concepts, we narrow that lens to share the individual story. It's important that my students see how these large historical and political forces impacted individuals and families. And that is my favorite part of the course. And finally, of course, we turn our lens then on ourselves. reflecting in our journals, creating poetry or art, exploring the themes of the class, such as racism, othering, intolerance, cowardice, and bystanding, as well as courage, love, community, and upstanding. We talk about how all of these can apply to us and our world. I love the class. I love teaching the class, and I've heard from a number of students who have loved it too. They have been reflective, engaged, intelligent, and compassionate. Look at the students who read for you today. These are the kind of wonderful students who fill my classes. And they give me tremendous hope for America's future. They are our future world changers, and they will be much more equipped than I was to do the great works. But I want to finish by addressing them for just a minute. All right, my young friends, as bright and capable as I know you are, there will be a time in your future where you will feel underprepared, where you will feel that you are not enough, that you are not smart enough or knowledgeable enough to do the important work in the world that you know needs doing. So I say to you, do it anyway. Boots on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to close the program with a couple of prayers. Jim is coming up to lead us.
The Kaddish, which is a Hebrew word for sanctification, is a hymn praising God that is recited during Jewish prayer services. The central theme of the Kaddish is the magnification and sanctification of God's name. The mourner's Kaddish is chanted as part of mourning rituals in Judaism. Kaddish is traditionally not recited alone. You'll find the Kaddish in Hebrew and in English transliteration on the back of your program. Please rise and join me in the mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yikadash shemei Rabbah be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayachon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dekol beit Israel b'gala u'v'zman kari v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'almei almayam. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'al v'romam v'yitnaseh v'tadal v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei dekudshah b'richu le'ela mincho birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechemata da'amiran ba'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shalama rabbah min shemayah V'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Osei shalom b'imromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. You may be seated. El Malei Rachamim, again Hebrew, means God full of mercy, is a Jewish prayer for the soul of a person who has died and is usually recited at the graveside during the burial service and at memorial services during the year. There are no graves for the 6 million. We say this prayer for them here at this time in their memory. El male rachamim, shochen bamromim, amtse menucha nechona, tachat kanfei hashchina, b'ma'alot kedoshim utvorim, kazohar harakia, Mashirim et nishmod kol achenu b'nei Yisrael anashim nashim v'taf shenitbechu v'shenechneku v'shenasrafu v'shenehergu Began Eden tehi menuchatam. Ana ba'al harachamim astirem beseter knafecha leolamim. Utzror bitzror hachaim et nishmotehem. Adonai hu nechalatam. V'yanuchu v'shalom al mishkavotehem v'nomar amen.
Thank you so much for being here for this service. It means so much to all of us and to all of you for participating. The chorus was just fantastic. The readers, so wonderful. Everybody. And Sheila, you're amazing. No wonder all the kids want to take your class. I can understand that. So if the candle lighters and the readers could just hang around for a few minutes because I want us to get some pictures of you guys. But everybody is free to leave. And when you leave, you'll see all these yellow bags out there. I'd like you to take at least one home so that you can light a candle tonight or anytime this week during Remembrance Week in honor of the Holocaust. So thank you. Okay.